Lakshmi from Designhill, and I welcome all of you to day 2 of WTF 20, which is the world's biggest digital conference for artists, brought to you by PrintShop by Designhill, which is one of the fastest growing creative print-on-demand marketplace. So, for those who do not know, who are new here, we have had one session yesterday. It was day 1, and today is day 2. So WTF 20 is a 3-day digital conference for artists, wherein we have series of events like AMAs, panel discussions, workshops. So today is the day 2 of the session, and our first speaker for today is Tyler Pate with us. He's taking a workshop. So let me introduce quickly our speaker for today. So, Tyler Pate is an art director and an illustrator from the United States. He is currently working as a full-time freelancer and illustrator and developing creative solutions for brands and companies. He takes pride to be a part of this thriving design community. Thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us today and taking out your time for conducting this workshop. We are really excited to have you.
Thank you. This is really fun, and I hope you guys are able to really take what I have and push it forward.
So today, Tyler will be, talking about Speed Art Workshop. And before we begin the session, let me quickly introduce you to, what PrintShop by Designhill. And first of all, I would also like to thank our associating partners who have helped us in WTF 20. Which are Illustration Artists Club, Graphic Designers Club, Pattern Designers Club, Typography Designers Club, Logo Designers Club. These are basically the Instagram pages that we have. And our online learning partner, Milan Art Institute, Georgia, USA. So before we start the session, let's look at what PrintShop by Designhill is and what WTF is all about. All right.
Awesome.
That was about PrintShop by Designhill, in case you were not aware of it. And that is about and you have already seen in the video, we have some good speaker lineups for WTF 20. So if you have not registered for the future sessions, we will be dropping the registration links in the chat section by end of the workshop with Tyler, and you can register for the upcoming session as well. So Tyler, we have 172 live attendees right now, and I am pretty sure that they all are equally excited. Guys, let us know in the chat section how excited you are for the workshop. And yeah, let's without any further delay, let's begin the session.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go ahead and dive into this, people. Let's begin with a little intro I made, and it'll kind of tell you what I've been doing and a little more about the creative pain, which I'll get into a little more with the session. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into a little bit of fun things that I love to do, which is illustrate. So as it was said, you know, I'm a graphic designer and illustrator, and I'm also the creator and founder of the Creative Pain, which is the intro slide that you just saw. And what that allows me to do is create all these illustrations under a brand. And the fun behind that is I'm able to explore every little medium within that. And a lot of times, you guys, if you're familiar with my Instagram or YouTube channel, I do a lot of illustrations. Some are pretty random, and it's kind of fun because I just come up with these ideas off the cuff, and a lot of times I'm just trying to merge two things and create something new. And you know, for this, I really wanted to have something a little more relevant to the times, and I think we're all kind of going through a weird moment with having to work from home and really share everything through an internet connection. And you know, there's this crisis with toilet paper. I thought it was a little funny, so I think we should all sit back and laugh a little bit as I take this illustration a little serious with this toilet paper snake. And so I am currently in Adobe Illustrator right now, and the cool thing about Illustrator and why I always start here is basically because I can always scale this illustration. You know, the final product is something that I could have as small as a thumbtack or as large as a billboard. And a lot of times in Photoshop and other sort of programs, you're kind of limited to a DPI or a resolution. And Vector and an Illustrator, you're able to really scale that as much as you want. And that's kind of where I began. So I started out with this pencil sketch. You know, some people like to sketch in other programs and import it into Illustrator or whatever have you. But I simply use pencil and paper, and it gets the job done. Take a picture of it with my cell phone and send it directly to the program. And from there, I use this as the base layer. And you'll notice like everything on the side over here in my layers, you know, I have my reference and my sketches, and then I have my artwork above that. And that's kind of where I'm going to build everything. You know, with the short time I have, I'm really pushing it with an Illustrator project this complex. But let's see what we can do with the time we have. So first thing I'm going to try to do is illustrate this this toilet paper roll here. The first thing I would start with is these oval shapes that you see here. Very simple. Get the ellipse tool. I'm going to build this thing right side up so I can have my straight lines. So roughly something like this. I'm going to go ahead and turn my stroke off. And we're going to work with solid shapes here. And you know, the best part about having your work layer above your reference or your sketches is the fact that you can isolate that layer by holding Command and clicking the little eyeball icon there. And then it gives you outlines of everything in that layer. So now you see that my work is, it's more transparent. So I can work on top of this drawing as I'm going through it. And we're just going to build that toilet paper roll. Again, just copying and pasting that same shape, expanding it from the center so it stays in the perfect center portion of this dimension. And I'm going to just keep working through this. And you see how I'm just duplicating the same shapes over and over. And you're able to get really consistent lines that way. And if you use some short keys, I use Command U a lot, and what that does is if you go up under View, that's adding my smart guides. So for any of you that want to really, jump into Illustrator, sometimes having smart guides help because it allows you to line up all of your stuff, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You see these little markers that appear when I start drawing, little pink lines. That's kind of helping me. That's what the smart guides do. They kind of help you move along the program and have everything either parallel or perpendicular to other shapes within the file. You'll notice I'm able to connect the dots a lot quicker that way. I'm just building out this shape, almost in a 3D manner. But what's really cool about this is I'm able to do all this in Illustrator. I'm having to have all of these shapes flattened, so it keeps my file size way down. So if you guys are ever struggling with any sort of technical problems with the computer, maybe it's the file size. That I found out through messing with 3D effects in Illustrator, it will just drag your computer down. And that's like going, if you went here, 3D effect, you could make this shape through here, but it's just too much on the computer most of the time. So I choose to do it this way instead. Selecting this, I'm doing Shift M, and what I'm able to do now is, you see, I'm able to really merge shapes that way. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I just noticed that this shape right here is not connected. Zooming in, making sure that this line, see, it wasn't actually connecting and touching this other shape, so it needs to touch there in order for this to work. There we go. Zoom back out. Make sure it's the same down here. Yeah, see how it's both of those shapes are touching. And by having those shapes touch like that, we're then able to merge them, like I was saying before. And that comes in handy down the road. Merging that, all this gets merged. Now we have that shape. And this is the shape that we're going to use for that toilet paper roll. And if we go ahead and go back to our regular view, we can go ahead and adjust these colors. I'm gonna modify these colors down the road, but just to show you some difference in each shape, that's what we're dealing with right now. So let's go back to the drawing. I see I have this little kind of like the toilet tissue coming undone from the roll there. I'm trying to figure out if I should add that now. Might have to add it later, but we can go ahead and try it. So I'm going to use the pen tool for this. I'm just going to kind of pick a point off that circle that I can just kind of come off from. And again, holding down without releasing the cursor, I'm able to get these little handles. These handles help my curve tremendously. So I'm just trying to find a curve that comes off that oval right there. So then I can play with that shape. Trying to think of this this piece in the world that it's living in right now. So it's the toilet paper roll is going to be on its side. There's kind of like a flap of paper coming up. So we need to think about how that would react in the real world.
Tyler, how did you come up with the idea of a toilet paper roll? Is it from the COVID-19 case?
Yeah,
the shortage of toilet paper in COVID-19.
It's definitely coming from that. I mean, it's a serious time that we're in, but I think sometimes it's a little funny how crazy things can get, and not focusing on the bad so much, but just people are just going crazy about toilet paper right now, which I think is something I thought could bring to a conclusion of, all right, what's an illustration that could be relevant to the times, but also be a little more lighthearted. And then I was thinking, all right, so everybody's treating toilet paper like such a scarcity, and it's got this fear connotation around it. And I think the snake represents that. And it's the fear of what it means and why it's so scarce. So I figured a snake would be cool to also illustrate, and something fun to to depict in this style. So as you can see, I'm starting to put this shape in there, roughly placing it. And I'm duplicating it. I always like to duplicate my shapes and objects just so that I could have a reference back to the original, because I'm going to modify this shape right here quite a bit. And sometimes you go far along and you realize that you might have messed up something. And it's good to have that reference back to the original. So just a key thing to always remember is to duplicate and just make sure you have a safety net, so to speak. I'm going to go back into outlines. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to stretch it a little bit. So we have like the snake coming out of the tube here, and it's kind of wrapping around the piece, and it should hide the bottom half of the toilet paper roll. And then we have a head. So I'm going to start with the snake portion coming out of the tube here. And I'm just going to sort of freehand this with the pen tool. And if a lot of you follow my work previously, you'll notice that I am definitely a avid user of the pen tool. I use a Wacom Cintiq, so I'm drawing all of this with a pen on tablet too. So I'm plotting all my points, as you'll see, with this pen. And it makes it a lot quicker. If you're using mouse, you could still do this. I used a mouse for probably 4 years before I finally upgraded to a Wacom. So it's definitely possible. It just takes a little more time, from my opinion. And I'm just kind of building this shape out from that oval in the center. And I'm roughly guesstimating a little bit of where my lines go, but you're able to see it pretty quickly when it's working, which is a good sign. For instance, you see that shape right there is just not organic enough, so we're going to play with the handles a little bit, try to get it nice and round. Again, we need shapes that are fluid. We're trying to mimic the thickness of this consistently. You could do this with a stroke, but I like to have a little more freedom to adjust my lines manually. So if you were to click on this, now you're starting to see this shape coming out. And you see it gets a little weird right here. It's a little too thick. I'm going to bring it down. Also, it just takes time. I mean, none of this stuff, even through my time lapses, it sometimes looks like it's very fast and very simple, but the majority of my time is spent just doing exactly what I'm doing right here. It's just adjustments. You get that basic shape, and then you're making a ton of adjustments and trying to just get everything to look consistent. See that I'm doing that. Here's another trick I could use to get this same oval shape on the bottom of the snake going in. I'm just going to expand this shape outward so it's completely overlapping this shape right here. And if you select both of them, I'm going to use Shift M, that merge tool again, and I'm going to merge that. I'm going to select it, copy, make sure that's copied in your clipboard. Going to go backwards, so Command Z. Now I'm back before I did that. I'm going to delete this, and then my clipboard still has that object in there, so I'm going to Command and paste it right back into place. And the reason I did that is so that I still have that shape of the snake, and I still have this original oval down below it. So I'm able to keep everything intact, and that's definitely key to have. And you'll see why here in a bit. So just to keep my colors from being too distracting, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a different color. We'll adjust these colors later. So now we're starting to get something that looks a little more like the sketch. And then we have all of these other segments of the snake kind of coming around the toilet paper. So what I'm going to do is try to find that high point like there. I'm just going to trace that outline of the sketch as much as I can. And it looks like the snake kind of goes back under itself right there. So this piece isn't as important to get right it's going to be hidden. All right. See if we can now get the other half of the snake. This piece is going above other objects. How many of you actually work in Adobe Illustrator? Do you prefer Adobe Illustrator? I know a lot of people now are on Procreate or an iPad. I've never worked on the iPad, so I'm always curious to hear what people think. I feel like that's a really good one for people to start with. And I mean, it's definitely a lot more mobile than having to lug around a drawing tablet or a laptop wherever you go. So an iPad would help with that. But it's just, I don't know, I'm a little more comfortable in these programs. I love the Adobe Suite programs, and I feel like I'm able to really do whatever I need to, but at the same time, I need a laptop or a computer to work off of. I'm currently working off of an iMac desktop with a Wacom Cintiq, so I'm pretty stationary at the moment. Now you're starting to see the snake take form. How's everyone else managing the time? I mean, I imagine everybody's got a lot more time on their hands, at least working from home. Are you guys able to stay creative and really, I don't know, work on your skill sets during this time, or what else are you doing? I've been trying to find time in between. I have a couple freelance projects that sort of take me away from doing these more personal illustrations, but I've been trying to find time to get on developing more 3D animated stuff. So Cinema 4D is something that's been on my radar for quite a bit, and I'm just trying to find time to get to it. I know I'll eventually get to it, but recently I'm just struggling starting a new program. I'm not familiar with it at all, but I know it's something that I've been curious and really looking forward to getting to for some time now. Any of you familiar with that program? Another tool that I constantly use is Command Y. That's Command Y. So that's outline. If you guys are ever working in Illustrator, you'll realize that, again, it gets back to what I said at the beginning. Using this top layer, which is my artwork, and then having my sketch and reference materials down below that layer allows me to turn this layer on and off to outline mode and then still see my sketch below like this. You can see this is the outline of all my lines, all of the illustration components. And it helps me just reference back to my original sketch and concept, which, as you see, that I'm basing this loosely off of a sketch I made of a toilet paper snake. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just trying to get this shape to bud up against the toilet paper here. So what I have to do in order to have that, I have to adjust the snake so that the lines are perfectly aside, parallel lines. So you are now seeing kind of everything sort of taking shape, and I'm doing it one segment at a time because I'm going to have to treat each one of these segments slightly different for once I get to like the scales and the shading. And I'm just adjusting my lines. I want it to look more fluid, and it helps to know a little bit of the anatomy of what you're illustrating. I recently pulled some reference materials. I'm going to use these later. I pulled these images before the start of this talk, and they're going to help me get the head of the snake. So I have some references here, and you'll also notice the pattern of the scales. That's all going to come in handy. So why I mention that now is because I've already looked and researched kind of different angles and motions of this snake and how it would fluidly wrap itself around this object, how it would go in, how it would come back out. and that's going to allow me to build these things so it looks a little more realistic. Now we're going to do this little tail. And this would be a little fun piece to do because you're going to see how it kind of loops underneath this bigger shape, comes around, and then goes right back over itself. So what we'll do here is we'll build that probably in 2 pieces. So I'm just going to start with this piece and build it upward like this. And I'm holding space. If you hold space bar, you can kind of, freely move that point. That's another quick tip that really speeds up the process. Because sometimes you can't always place these points perfectly every time. So let's see how I have to think through this piece. I know it's going to have to be 2 pieces because it's overlapping. But for the time being, I'm just going to adjust it like this. That's technically 2 shapes. That's one there, and then I just made this line here. And I'm going to use the clipping mask tool to kind of chop all these up a little bit. But I want to get my curves right because it's going to help it seem more fluid after I cut it. All right, so see I'm getting a nice little curve here. I'm going to try to place this almost in the center of what I think this shape would be. And whenever I'm looking at shapes like this, I'm imagining this being a perfect circle. So just to show reference, I'm imagining it being like that. So I'm visually seeing this every time. So I want to try to plot the center of the tail in the circle as a reference. So this needs to kind of go up. I'm adjusting it as needed. And again, it's sort of, I think of it like finessing anything. I mean, it's sort of subjective. I mean, if you guys were to reference my sketch and illustrate this snake, I'm sure it would be different every single time. Even if I was to illustrate this snake again, it would be different, which is kind of cool because it shows you how you can make everything that you create your own, and it makes every piece unique. And I think there's something fun about that. You don't have to worry about too many people copying your work because there's only one that fit those exact lines. All right, so I think it's getting close. So I'm going to select this, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to think through this shape. So first off, again, I'm back to Shift M, and that's my merge tool. And what I'm able to do with that is now clip this piece out, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do Command Z because I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to do Command F, which is going to paste that shape back in place. So what I always like to do is have that safety net, because not only do I have this cutout, but I also have that original shape underneath. Because again, you never know, you might get all the way through this and realize you need to adjust some lines. And if you don't have that original shape, then you're kind of screwed there. So it helps to have that reference. And now I need to figure out this tail portion. I think I'm gonna have to fake it a little bit. It's gonna look like it's one piece, but really it won't be. This is where color comes into play. So this should probably be, let's do that. That above. What I'm doing right now, I'm adjusting the arrangement of these shapes. I'm placing some above and some below each other. since this is going to need a shadow, I know that there's going to be a shadow here because it's going above itself, and I know it needs to be curved. So I'm going to kind of let that be the separating point. All right, so what I've recently been doing is I've been working on this tail here. I figured making a little cutout in the tail would help me get the shape above it. So if I broke this apart, that's kind of what I'm dealing with. And it's able to help me with a shadow there too. Let's see, we got another shape over here. We're going to use the ellipse tool. That's a solid piece. Take that all the way back. What kind of questions we got? I haven't been checking this.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions in the questions tab.
Awesome. I don't know where to begin. There's so many.
So let's quickly check the questions then.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I was also going through the chat section, and it's great to see that people are thoroughly enjoying the whole workshop. So that's amazing. Now heading over to questions. Okay, all right. I see a lot of questions here. So Tyler will go with those which is having the maximum upvotes, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see, upvotes. Oh, 13.
Okay.
Let's see. I mostly draw things already drawn. How do I expand this?
Okay, so we have a question from Roshita, and it has got 3 upvotes. She is asking, do you have any thoughts, pros and cons for Wacom versus using Procreate on an iPad?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I think there's a lot of considerations to that. First off, one's an iPad. Wacom, you're going to need a laptop. So I would almost define those two things first, because what you can't have on the iPad, which is Creative Suite. Creative Suite is Adobe Creative Suite, which is Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, After Effects, all of those like wonderful products. There is no comparable program like that on the iPad. The Creative Suite has like alternative app versions that go on the iPad, but they are by no means as powerful as the ones for the computer. So I think of it like that. I feel like if you're going to use Creative Suite programs and they need a laptop, then you're going to use a Wacom or just any sort of drawing tablet that you connect to a computer. Procreate, again, is on an iPad. So you're using Procreate. Procreate's great. If you have both of those platforms, I think you're in the best world, because you could take that iPad and go on the plane and go travel, and you can draw in Procreate and send that to Illustrator, send that to Photoshop, and then really elaborate that illustration even more in that program. But if you're not planning on jumping to Adobe Suite, or like I said, I primarily use Illustrator. So if you're not planning on going to Illustrator at all or using Adobe products, then I would say go get an iPad, go get Procreate, because that's going to help you kind of go everywhere. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from the whole Wacom, Procreate, iPad debate is, can you create no matter what, wherever you are? That's, for me and my career, I found that I am very limited to my desk, and I can't really go very far from it and still have the same resources that I would normally have. So I hope that would answer it. I would say, to sum that up, if you are working off of a computer, get a Wacom. If you have an iPad, just stick with it and use Procreate.
And okay, going ahead with the next question, we have from AB, and he's saying, how do you go about exploring a new illustration style?
It's it's interesting. I generally have a running list of ideas or just notes that, you know, I'm constantly on different design inspiration sites, you know, Dribble, Behance, Instagram's huge for it. You know, I'm creating little folders of, oh, I like this, I'll save that, I'll save that, I'll save that. And what I'm saving are ideas or styles that I find very interesting. And that running list is allowing me to, whenever I'm ready to sit down and work on something completely new, I'm just kind of looking through that list, and whatever kind of pops up first in my head, I was like, oh, this looks really cool. That style would work perfect with this other idea that I've been thinking about. So I merged the two like that. So defining that, I mean, it's all preference. I'm typically drawn towards things that are, you know, almost iconic, or something that has an isometric view or perspective to it, or even like what we're illustrating right now. It's kind of a merge of a couple different things. It's got perspective, but it also has, you know, something that's going to have a lot of texture, because the snake's going to have all the opportunities for texture. So I'm defining processes and styles based off of what I can get out of it. So that's kind of how I look at it, is how can I have a style or direction benefit me and what I want to achieve with it.
Awesome. Awesome. Going ahead with the next question, which has got 18 upvotes. 18 people are asking that question, which is, I mostly, okay, Nasheen is asking the question, I mostly draw things which is already drawn. I can't draw from imagination, and it tips on how to practice that, how to draw by imagining a specific thing.
I guess there's a couple of different directions to think about that. If you're imagining, you mean coming up with original ideas. You know, look at look at what I'm drawing right now. I'm literally drawing a tube of toilet paper with a snake running through it. I don't know where that came from. That's just, you can kind of see there's relevance to what we're all kind of going through, which is this, you know, pandemic with coronavirus, and it kind of stemmed this whole outlandish reaction to hoarding toilet paper. That's kind of where that idea came from. And then for purposes of how do I make that interesting, I wanted to then incorporate something that not only can balance this composition, which is by having this snake intertwine within it, but I'm also able to achieve something really cool by, again, I know that this snake is going to have a lot of texture. I know this snake's going to have scales. I know it's going to have all these little details that I really want. So it was a no-brainer for me to go with the snake, because it checked all the boxes I wanted. But there's nothing wrong with, you know, going off of reference materials. Again, I showed earlier, I have this reference right here of two snakes. I'm going to get to these, and I'm going to use potentially the head of these snakes, because they have sort of the angle, and there's a lot of, you know, nuances to this snake and the composition, that it's sort of counterproductive for me to sit there and try to draw it over and over until I get it perfect, when I could just use this reference material, you know, get this head perfect, and then incorporate it with, you know, my sketch, which is what I'm going to do. So I think there's a balance to it. You just have an imagination, or just being able to visualize it. The biggest thing that helped me whenever I think of that breakthrough moment was when I went from, how do I create original content and not just have it solely rely on something I've seen. And that kind of came from just doing this enough. I got familiar with the programs. I've been doing this for, man, I've 7 years, 8 years I've been doing this. And 5 of those years I was an art director at a design agency, where I was, you know, working at a high, you know, output. So I was able to really go through a lot of styles and just explore a lot of different variations really quick. And by doing that, I'm able to just get faster with the program. I'm able to get more comfortable with the program, and just feel comfortable with doing my own thing. And once you start feeling that way, you start seeing things as time limit. Like, how long is that going to take me? It's not the question of if I can do it, it's how long is that going to take me? And that's probably the biggest milestone I've ever hit, which was getting to that mindset. And the only way I got there was through just working on this and practicing every single day. I think everyone who knows me personally could probably say that I'm a little obsessed with illustrating and just design and processing, and I spend a lot of time on it because I really enjoy it. So just keep working on it, and I think you'll surprise yourself when you finally hit that aha moment and you're making your own creative decisions based off an idea or an imagination.
So Tyler, what trends do you see in 2020 when it comes to illustration?
Trends, I feel like there's still an upward trend on this whole editorial design style. Things that you see on applications like, Facebook or Instagram or, LinkedIn, Dropbox. All these platforms are using this this very editorial style. And what I mean is it's just very simplistic. I think that's on a very cool trend. I like the style a lot. I've explored that. If you guys have looked at my Instagram recently, I did an illustration with the Wacom, and it has this girl kind of, poking at a shark. And if you look at that, that's editorial style work right there. And that's kind of what I mean. I feel like that trend is really consistent lately, and I think a lot of people want to see more of it. So I could see that really becoming a known trend for 2020.
And Tyler, at the same time, we often get this question from the beginners who are just starting out into illustration, that those who are newbies and beginners into this whole field, what suggestion give them, and how should they start? How should they go about it? And what mistakes to avoid?
The first thing I could tell you is create, and that seems like such a misguided answer. Is you have to create as much as you can, and I still do that today. And what you get from doing that is your workload and your output becomes this whole other beast, and you're able to really explore things quicker. And the faster you get at the program, the better that everything with the process comes to you, because you're going to understand what you can do and how you can do it. You'll understand how perspective works. You'll understand how color plays a huge effect. Right now I'm laying out rough colors. This is not going to be the color you see at the final product, but what I'm doing with these colors, I'm defining shapes. That's part of, understanding perspective and a lighting source, and what needs to be cast as a shadow, what needs to be cast as a highlight. So the best advice I can give you is just creating more, because the more projects you have like that, the more understanding you're gonna be on it. And I would say, if you're just starting out or if you're in school, you're at a more advantaged position than any other designer who's in the field, because you hopefully would have a little more time to explore these programs. You would have a little more time to experiment and not have as much criticism. And I think that's a big fear for a lot of people. I mean, I still have fears of, is this good enough? And that's just something you have to deal with. But the more you do and the better you get at it, the more confidence you get with the result. And once you start seeing the result you want consistently, nothing can stop you. You're just gonna become a powerhouse of just creating stuff. Let's see, I see one that says, I'm bad at drawing. How can I begin with quick sketching for my designs? I honestly think I'm bad at drawing too, if that helps you. I use drawing and sketching in my notebook as a form of ideas to remember. I don't necessarily use them as that's totally what it's going to look like when I'm finished, which is kind of what I did here. I use it as a reference material, such as if that sketch is enough for you to remember and understand what the concept is, then that's good enough. If you want to get better at anything, it just takes doing it over and over. You can get better at it. Taking classes, I think, things like right now, you're able to watch me and my process. Finding these types of, webinars or tutorials are kind of at our fingertips right now. And that's pretty cool to think that, we can kind of look up anything and find an answer for it. I'm going to jump back to this toilet paper real quick. But yeah, this is it's a process. It's trial and error. The best result you can get is one that you can continue to evolve. I couldn't say that enough. I mean, my process is not perfect. There are things that I'm wanting to try to get better at all the time. And it just takes time. That's all it takes. It just takes time working within these programs and understanding it more and using Command Z a lot. So I'm going forward, going backwards until it feels right. How to get that intuition of knowing if it feels right or not, that is from looking at other people's artwork and seeing things that inspire me. So there are people that I follow and that I really enjoy watching their process for, and I try to be as good as them. That's all it takes.
And there's a similar question which Carol is asking, which is about any tutorials you used to learn or any YouTube channels in particular if you follow.
There's none in particular. Usually whenever I'm looking for how to do something, I'm broadly searching, because I don't think there's one channel that I can think of that really has answered all the questions I have. And just understanding how to search for those things that you're looking for, such as if you're looking for something in perspective, what type of perspective are you looking for? Are you looking for a vanishing point perspective? Are you looking for a isometric perspective? Once you understand those terms, then you use those terms to search. And those key search terms are probably the best thing that you can use to find those results that you want. What I'm doing also, by the way, it's an interesting thing. At first I was just repeating and kind of guesstimating the lines of the toilet paper throughout this shape. I redid that. I actually want to use a blend mode instead. So what I did was use one shape here at the minimum distance, and then one shape at the maximum distance. And then if you do Option Command B, which is blend, I'll show you exactly where that's at. That's Object, Blend, and it will say Make right here, but I've already made it, so that's Release. And by doing that, you're able to have the program not even guesstimate, but precisely plot each of those lines in a blending mode. And you can adjust that easily by double-clicking the blend option, specific distance. Now you see it kind of working like that. That's a huge time saver. That also allows you to have a little more precision to your work, which is kind of cool to have.
Great. So guys, we are also short on time. It's almost 11, and
Oh no.
I think we have, yeah. So we have answered a lot of questions, Tyler. And although there are a lot of questions which are still there, but due to shortage of time, we won't be able to, take up all the questions. So guys, we have already shared the Instagram handle of Tyler on the chat section with you. You can follow his work there. You can DM him with your questions there, and yeah, I am sure that he would be, he's very active there. He would be happy to sort of help you. And Tyler, anything else that you would like to say to the audience?
I would say, yeah, check out my social media. I have a YouTube channel at The Creative Pain. I plan on doing, videos like this and kind of walk you through the process And if you ever want to see, the amount of work that I'm working on and kind of how I shuffle through that process from a day-to-day basis, my Instagram is pretty relevant to that. I would definitely check that out. And if you have any questions, feel free to respond through there. And if you're looking for something cool to buy, then check out the Creative Pain shop.
Awesome. So guys, that brings us to the end of this workshop. It was a jam-packed, very valuable session. Although I couldn't be a part of it for some, point of time because of my bad network over here. But any which ways, I hope that you guys thoroughly enjoyed the whole session. And I can see your feedback, which is really nice, coming out really positive. And I hope to see you guys in the next session. It's the topic of the session is how to transition from a watercolor artist to a pattern designer. So that's coming up next. That's an AMA session. So the link will be there in the chat section. If you have not registered yet, this is the last chance. Do follow Tyler on his Instagram account. Stay tuned for the coming session. Follow us on Instagram at Designhill and PrintShop Global, because all of these sessions, you will keep on getting the updates there. So that's about it for today. Thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us. It was pleasure having you, and it was a very valuable session for today.
Thank you. And again, I'll see you guys next time, and check out my stuff if you want to see the continuous flow of this illustration. I plan on finishing it on social media, so check me out there.
Yeah, until then, take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay
Thanks
healthy.
Again.
And bye-bye. See you in the next session. All right. See you.